Should we wait for the others to join, or would you like me to just start to stay on time?
Yeah, we could start.
I'm happy to wait also.
We can start because Geraldine has another meeting afterwards. So if we can keep on time, that'll be amazing. Oh, they're here.
Great. And then you'll be sharing the slides?
Yes. Okay, let me know if you can see my screen. Normally is charging.
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
Good. Then I will get started. Welcome, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thank you for joining us today for the first in a series of Focused Green Solutions webinars presented by Construction 21. The webinar series is focused on climate change adaptation, which is driven by a simple concept, which is that climate change is a global issue, but the solutions are local. Each of the sessions in the webinar series is meant to tackle a specific climate hazard challenge, bringing together concrete case studies from around the world to share practical and inspiring answers. The series runs over 8 webinars, 3 in 2026 and 5 more next year in 2027. And it's designed as a platform with a targeted audience, including national and local governments, businesses, NGOs, and environmental and resilience professionals. Welcome. Next slide, please. My name is Judy Zakreski. I am the co-chair of the Adaptation Hub of the Global Alliance for Buildings and Construction, or Global ABC, and I'm delighted to be your host for this first Focus Green Solutions session, which has as its theme water management. My day job is as the Senior Vice President of Global Operations and Solutions at the International Code Council, ICC, which is an NGO domiciled in the United States with a focus on building safety. I work with national governments, local jurisdictions, standards bodies, and regional organizations to provide access to ICC's model codes and standards, conformity assessment, training, credentialing, and advisory services to build capacity and facilitate the development of safe, sustainable, and resilient communities around the world. Both adaptation to the increasingly frequent and severe weather hazards that we're experiencing as a global community, as well as the building water nexus, are among many of the important issues that I work with every day. And the connection between water and adaptation is complex, as jurisdictions around the world struggle to deal with too much or too little water, sometimes both at different times, which are too often unpredictable. And so today's 1-hour webinar will feature 3 presentations that spotlight thoughtful approaches to adaptation, involving some aspect of this essential resource. But first, I want to spend a few minutes on adaptation and the work of the Global ABC Adaptation Hub. Next slide. Oh, that's where we want to be. Sorry, you can go back. So adaptation is often overlooked in discussions about buildings and climate, and it also doesn't get the priority that it deserves in practice. Adaptation is harder to measure and maybe not as sexy or as fun as decarbonization, but it is at least equally as important, if not more so. We are no longer talking about the future when we're talking about adaptation. We are already feeling the impacts of our changing climate. Heat waves, floods, storms are no longer theoretical scenarios. They're destroying buildings. They're killing people. And we desperately need to adapt, especially in lower resourced areas where vulnerability is the most acute. Yet, despite the well-documented consequences of climate change and the identification of effective adaptation levers by stakeholders across the buildings and construction value chain, the pace of adaptation has remained insufficient. Why? Because we're suffering from a paralyzing fragmentation. In this publication entitled Why Are We Still Not Adapting?, which was released during the Buildings and Climate Global Summit in Paris 2 years ago, the Global ABC Adaptation Hub identified the heart of the problem as fragmentation. Think about all of the different stakeholder groups that comprise the buildings and constructions value chain, from national and subnational governments to designers, builders, property owners and managers, financial and insurance companies, materials manufacturers, utilities, building occupants, and civil society organizations. We exist in an ecosystem where no single group has the capacity, or more realistically, the will, to drive decisive change and to demand that adaptation and resilience be prioritized. Everyone is waiting for someone else to act first. And we find ourselves in a situation where when everyone is responsible, no one is responsible. But the truth is that everyone is really responsible, and responsibility means action, where you have the capacity to act. People who live and work in a building have the means to do so can choose or demand adaptive or resilient buildings. They can refuse a project that ignores climate risks. Designers can design for resilience, even when it's not a requirement for them to do that. They can become the champions who drive changes in standards and regulation. Insurers can offer better premiums for resilient buildings and transform market incentives overnight. Developers and financial organizations can offer incentives when buildings are properly adapted to current and future hazard conditions. They can demand that their investments are resilient. And governments set the rules of the game. They have the power to transform the entire economy. Next slide, please. The Global ABC Adaptations Hub's approach is to work within these silos, at the same time recognizing that an action taken by one stakeholder group creates a cascade of opportunities for the other stakeholder groups to act. Think about this scenario. A national government adopts policies that grant municipalities and regions the authority, resources, and autonomy to implement adaptation measures effectively. This unleashes the power in subnational governments that develop non-monetary incentives to encourage resilience. The incentives, in turn, motivate insurers to offer more attractive resilience-based products. Better insurance products attract banks, which offer more favorable financing for resilient projects. Designers, seeing these opportunities, prioritize resilience to benefit from the incentives, and so on. One domino pushes the next. What seems impossible in silos becomes possible in a chain. Next slide, please. And over the past 2 years, the Adaptation Hub has developed tools to make it easier for the various groups of stakeholders to identify the most important actions that they can take independently within their sphere of influence to move the needle on adaptation. But we didn't develop the tools in a vacuum, and the Adaptation Hub didn't create yet another roadmap or a new set of guidelines. Instead, we drew on existing frameworks and agreements that the stakeholders had already bought into, and we built on them. Next slide, please. The result is a set of interconnected pathways separated by stakeholder group that are ready for implementation, or at least to motivate action. They're not set in stone, they're not absolute. They're meant to inspire action. The QR code on the screen will take you to the Adaptation Hub landing page on the Global ABC website. I invite you to visit the page and access the pathways. Have a look at those that are relevant for the stakeholder groups that apply to you. And then look at those that are connected with you on the value chain. Next slide, please. The pathways contain useful information to help anyone who wants to do their part get started in adaptation. Next slide. The pathways are free to use, download, and share. And we'd appreciate it if you do spread the word and let us know what you think of them. We see them as a starting point, and we understand that they need to be practical and applicable. We've done a lot of consultations, but every new voice at the table brings new valuable input, which we welcome. Next slide, please. And looking forward throughout this year and into next year, we want to uplift the stakeholders who are already making adaptation happen. We're interested particularly in the process that they followed to move the needle, even more than in the final outcome, because others need to understand the process and challenges if they want to do something similar. And that is why I'm really excited to be with you here today and to welcome our esteemed speakers. We have representatives from different stakeholder groups, designers, building owners, materials manufacturers, all of whom took independent action in their respective spheres of influence to achieve significant adaptation outcomes. I'm looking forward to applauding their work. I'm going to spare you long introductions and let each speaker introduce themselves as they walk us through their projects and the processes that they followed. We'll pause after each presentation to give you all an opportunity to ask questions. Please go ahead and enter your questions into the Q&A function in Teams during the presentation as they come to you, and then they'll be ready for me to pose to our presenters. Our first presenter is Vera Römer of ICI Architects in Brussels. Vera is going to be introducing GROW, a project that transformed a former car park into a green urban courtyard, featuring a permanent pond and extensive green roofs designed to reduce urban runoff. Vera?
Vera, you can unlock your mic.
Vera, it looks like your microphone is enabled. I think you just need to click mic and unmute yourself. Should we move to a different presenter, Lillian? I know the slides will be out of order.
Yes, sorry, I'm trying to unlock her mic. I'll be just a second. Okay, normally she'll be able to do it now. Can you try, Vera?
I think she may have gone off and tried to reconnect.
Okay, then we can move on to our next speaker, and then we'll get back to her.
So are Andrea and Gerard here? Yes. Are you able to unmute?
Hello?
Yes, Andrea.
Yes.
Okay, so we'll move to our presenters, Andrea Donsell and Gerard Membrado of Altura Architects in Andorra. Andrea and Gerard will be presenting their design for Ossa Park, which is an urban renewal project designed with multiple water management solutions, including rainwater harvesting and the creation of a lagoon from an existing agricultural water intake. Andrea and Gerard, please share with us your case study.
Okay. First of all,
Andorra is a little country between France and Spain. We have 90,000 population, and the park is in Encamp, is a little village from 2,000 population. The park is in the middle, has a central position of the village, and can you the slides? Yeah, next one.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is Encamp. So the existing plot, it was next one. Yeah, and the next. So this is based of urban development. We received a plot that it was a car park and a camping. So, and we propose not to do two parks, rather to make only one park, because the strategy it was to place the road underground, and the road is the entrance for the car park that is below. So this is the idea, to do only one park with the road below. The buildings are situated in the north area. For that reason, all the building is very well oriented to the sun, and the park is in front of the river. For that reason, we think from a physical approach and also a conceptual approach, the park is faced to the river. Traditionally, in Andorra, buildings are back to the rivers. In that case, we propose that all the public space is in front of the river. And we use agriculture water catchment existing to create a new lagoon, and that lagoon is crossed by a bridge, by a pathway, to increase this experience of the guests, of the people. Also, we built a viewpoint that you enter inside of the river, 10 meters, is a cantilever viewpoint, to also extreme or this experience of the river. Next, please. So you can see this is the existing river, and this is the existing river with the buildings very close, and is the back facade of the buildings. And for the proposal, we have next, please. We have that viewpoint in cantilever and that bridge that crosses the lagoon. The lagoon is height vegetalized, and we have water plants, demi-water plants. So we have also some species of animals inside, but all the project is to improve an experience to the water. Next. This is a lagoon, and all the water go again to the river. Next. This is this is like the water of the lagoon come back to the river. And all the lagoon is with the plants. There is in the project we have about 1,000 different species. So the interest is to restore the biodiversity that we have before all that land were urbanization.
Okay, so in this project, as we can see, water is not only a technical element that allows us to design this new public space, it is also an opportunity to create a more responsive model for water management. No? So this is the reason, because of we used in all the public space this permeable and filtering surface pavements, which allows us to infiltrate directly the rainwater to the soil. So this way we create a delay to the water for the arrival to the drainage network. So this is also one decision that we made during the design process. And if we go to the next slide, please. Okay, another decision related to the water management was to introduce this vegetation roof, because in center way, it allows us to retain the rainwater, and it supports also a new biodiversity, because our ambition in the project was to recreate this biodiversity that we have originally in the old park. And if we go, yeah. And maybe one point that it's not in the slide, which is an interesting point also, is that there is no mechanical pumping in the project, so all the system operates by gravity, which reduces the dependence of the machines, artificial systems, no? So at this point, we think that this type of decision is also a responsibly design in this issue, no?
Even if the car park is under the river level, we convince the owner to use a public extra public space along the river, 150 meters down, to put the sewage. So that there's any pump on the project, because we are always based on gravity.
And then to create this single ecological system which includes the park and the buildings and all the green and children's area, there are another strategies that were important for us. The first one was the wooden structure that we have seen in the other slide. Yeah. So timber is the material we choose for structure, for facades, for the play structures also of the park. So we reduce the embodied carbon. And another fundamental theme for us was you can pass to the next one, please. It was the reutilization of some different stones for the old walls we found in the park. We use them for the new ones. And we also reuse other elements like the fence. You can pass to the, thank you. Yeah, so all these themes, yeah, and you can pass, yeah. Thank you. The energy efficient of the building was at some point also fundamental for us. And we did all of this energetic study to avoid the overheating by creating these overhangs you can see in the image. So we were sure that we have the solar exposure control, and we can introduce the a less demand energy. Yeah, you can pass to the next one. Yeah, we have also introduced light wells to provide daylight and to reduce also the dependence of the artificial light. So at this point, yeah, as you can see, the water management related to all these other points, I think allows us to achieve a project which is in this sense adapted to this climate necessity of today. And for us to water in this project, it was not only a technical tool which allows us to create this water path to recover the relation between the river and the city, and to generate this public space. It was also an element that give us the opportunity to create a public space, which is at the same time also something educational, no? Because all the visitors can experience the river again, and they can also be able to see the water levels changing, the seasonal transformation. They can also appreciate the biodiversity that the lagoon helps us to create. And this is why we think in one single project, we could introduce different points for this adaptation that we think architecture has to achieve.
The last thing that we don't tell, the community use the existing, so we collect all the rainwater of the roofs. We collect, and all the community use that project to reuse that water for irrigation for all the village.
Thank you so much, Gerard and Andrea. I don't see any questions right now in the Q&A, so I encourage our participants, our audience, to add questions if you have any about the presentation to the Q&A. But in the meantime, I will start with a question, which is, if a group wanted to, even you, if you wanted to replicate this kind of project in another location, are there specific conditions that need to be met? Or do you think it was more of a function of being incredibly thoughtful in all of your choices of design, down to the smallest detail? Or were there sort of existing conditions, either in policy, regulation, or physical conditions that were required that enabled you to create this lovely space that has so many environmental benefits?
I think some of them became from our thinking. So reuse materials, built with timber. Some of them is we apply in other projects. But in that case, the situation of the road, the proximity of the river. So in that case, this is very specific, and in other projects we will see what happened. But it's true that we try to work thinking of carbon, biodiversity, timber. So it's a make of thinking.
Yeah, I maybe will add that normal, I think, is usually to see the water in architecture like a problem, because normally it's something we are afraid. And in this case, I think water was an opportunity. And that's something that I think we can apply to other projects, because to create permeable, here we have the river, which is something very specific. But to create permeable suffice, for example, or green roofs, or all these elements that we have seen in the slides, I think they are like something that we can introduce in all the projects. So at the end, the opportunity to create a more responsibly model for the water management is always there.
Excellent. So it really was you're going in with a very specific mindset. Implementing that and being very, very dedicated to those principles, and embracing the water. There's a question from Andrew Minson. Thank you, Andrew. Wondering if there was a member of the project team, and I suppose this could extend to, the people beyond your own architectural firm, including, the city and your clients and other regulators, was there anyone who gave you difficulty, who was hard to convince to support the key actions? And if so, how did you convince them?
No, we only need to convince some techniques of the government, because they request to uh, um, the water, when the water come back to the river, we must to demostrar, demonstrate that we don't increase more than 1.5 degrees. So it was a hard way to justify that, and at the end we justify from a simulation, and at the end of the project we justify in a real check temperature. So it was 1 point because they don't want to put again the water, hot water in the river. It was a one issue. For the rest, we win a competition with popular vote. So of the community, it was agreed with our project, and I think the community and the rest. So there's no problem. It was a very happy project.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. If people continue to have questions, please put them in the chat or the Q&A, but we're going to move on now to back to Vera, or are we going to Geraldine?
Yeah, I can go ahead if you want.
Okay. So Geraldine is representing both a building owner and a materials manufacturer, Suprema, that puts its own products to use when envisioning its manufacturing plant in Beaune, making the installation more sustainable, including the integration of gray water and rainwater management solutions. So welcome, Géraldine Bonnin, and please walk us through your project.
Okay, thanks a lot. So I am Géraldine Bonnin. I am actually heading the water management division at Soprema, which is including several product and solution, such as Sopranature for green roof and urban heat island reduction, sky water also for stormwater management, and gray water reuse, as you mentioned, and Keep for rainwater monitoring and reuse. So today, yeah, I will talk about the Beaune Suprema plant. So Suprema like to use its own building for R&D topics, actually, to ensure several things. First, that the material that we are proposing is the best product offer in the market. Then we like also to monitor the efficiency of our solution and get data about this solution. And finally, we like to guarantee our product quality across the full life cycle of the building. So that's why we also wanted the Beaune plant, that is a plant producing a bio-based cellulosic insulation, to be as sustainable as it could be. And that's why it integrates a lot of solution with low environmental impact. So this building, I was telling about the sustainable solution. So it has natural lighting. It has bio-based insulation with wood fiber in it. It has also a cool roof, waterproofing, and solar energy generation. And finally, coming back to our topic of the day, which is the water management, we put green roof on the roof of that building. Because as we already tell about earlier, This is contributing to rainwater drainage during the period of rain, but it also contributes to reduce this urban heat island with evapotranspiration of the plant. And finally, we already mentioned it also, it adds again biodiversity, which is quite important in an industrial area. So that was the green roof, but that green roof was also combined with a rainwater reuse system because vegetated roof cannot work if there is no water in it. So that's the water management system that we put in place actually to optimize rainwater management overall, but also to reduce the use of potable water consumption for some topics where potable consumption is not needed. So in average with this solution, with that full solution, Kipopri by Soprema, this is reducing the use of potable water by 75% on these technical uses. And actually for that specific plant in Suprema in Beaune, we use it for irrigation of the green space, so all the green space on the roof and on the back of the building, but also for the supply of sanitary facility, and finally for the cleaning of the photovoltaic panels. So how does it work exactly? Actually, this is a system working, so first with a patented mechanical filtering system that is working without consumable items. So this is quite important for the kind of long term. So this is the first step, this filtering. Then we have a storage capacity, actually basically with tanks, that we are sizing depending on several points. So depending on the region and the city, so depending on the type of rain. So, but depending also on the size of the roof, so what we can collect in terms of a cubic meter. And finally, what are the technical uses needed by the size. And finally, all this is linked with a management system of water that we distribute the water on the several usage, and also switching to potable water in case the tank are empty with the rainwater. So this is enabling real-time tracking, and this is also enabling to have a look on the water saving achieved. If we just take the system that is in place in this factory since the beginning of the year, the real coverage that we have right now, so the coverage rate is 88% since the beginning of the year, but we are planning to achieve 100% until the end of the year. So this is why I'm saying that we use our building also for R&D and for getting data, that we are sure that what we are implementing in the market is something sustainable and reliable in the long term. So finally, my point around it was to say that there are already water tech solutions that are existing, and it's our role, and what you say, Judy, to help develop and implement them into the buildings. So concerning the plant in Beaune and globally our solutions, there are several things. First, we need to adapt to each site. So this is quite important to take into account the full environment for the water management and overall for the sustainable building construction. Then this is a product that is reliable and easy to use. So again, I mean, this is important to take into account that the building will last longer and that it will need to be even more adaptive in the future. And finally, it shows real-time effect and saving with the data. So that will also show the performance and the monitoring of the full solution. Just to finish, for me, I mean, it's even maybe the most important is what this the plan director is mentioning in his testimonial, that it also integrates in the mindset of the people, the water management, and the fact that we have to take care of these resources into the day-to-day business and operation. So this is also the kind of more social things that is also important to make the people aware that we do not need to waste this resource that is getting lower and lower.
Thank you, Geraldine. Really inspirational, and again, I love to see the initiative taken within the areas that you can control as a materials manufacturer and building owner. That's the spirit that we all need to embrace. There's a question here that sort of came in the last session, but I think you might be able to answer it because you also had a vegetative roof.
Yes.
And there's a question about whether a vegetative roof can be applied to an existing roof that hasn't been designed for vegetation. I think the question is, can it be converted?
Yeah.
And you touched on that, so I'll throw that question to you.
We do. I mean, it's always more easy when you talk about a new building, because then you can size the structure so that it can adopt either green roof or solar roof, because we can have the same type of discussion with a solar roof. So when you do renovation, you can do renovation with green roof and solar roof, but then you first need to say with a specialist, with engineer, if your roof is solid enough, let's say, to admit the kind of additional weight that either solar panel or vegetative roof will bring to your building. We do have, and that's something that we did develop the last year at Soprema, we did develop a specific light solution, let's say. So we do have light panels for solar if you want to bring more energy. And we also have a light solution for green roof. They are maybe right now a bit less effective than the kind of solution that we can bring on new building, but at least, and again, and that was my point, I mean, we need to move forward and to go step by step. So maybe it's not perfect, but at least it's a kind of a new way to at least go in the right direction.
Exactly. Good philosophy. And then I'm just going to ask one more question about implementing these solutions at an industrial scale, the vegetative roof and the other solutions that you used. I mean, certainly it's a different challenge to implement on a manufacturing facility than, potentially even a residential building or an individual home. So were there unexpected challenges in implementing the solutions at an industrial scale?
Well, we are used to deal with industrial sites, but also like commercial sites and also kind of public and residential. So we know, and that was also about the environment. So we know that each type of building has other constraints, and we are not proposing the same solution within an industrial site than whatever, a school, for example. So in that part, it is clear that we put more focus on the solar panels, because an industrial site is using a lot of energy, and maybe a bit less on the water reuse, because we know that we don't need so much water in this industrial site. If I am going to a school, for example, that is sure that I will push more for green roof, because here there is a real a challenge to get this urban heat island down within a school. And I know also that the school is using a lot of potable water. And again, then I will maybe size a bit higher these tanks to make sure that this building will use as less potable water as it is possible. So of course there are challenges with all the sites, but that's our role also to take the environment.
And really looking at prioritizing what solutions are going to deliver the most impact and adaptation and sustainability. Fantastic. Thank you so much, Geraldine. Now we will move back to Vera of ICI Architects in Brussels, and hopefully Vera is able to connect her audio now, her mic, and she'll be talking to us about GROW, which, as a reminder, is a project that transformed a former car park into a green urban courtyard, featuring a permanent pond and extensive green roofs designed to reduce urban runoff. Vera, the floor is yours.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes, perfect. Thank you.
Nice. Okay. So hi, I'm Vera Römer from ICI Architectes. So we are based in Brussels. We are a little architecture office. You can go next. So today I want to present you our project GROW, and it's a place where also our architecture office is based. Next. So the project is based in Brussels. So as Judy said, it's like a place in an interior courtyard block. So in Brussels, we have a lot of this kind of typology. So at the beginning, like you can see that there's like a big courtyard, which was at the beginning mainly closed with stone paved, but I will show you some photos afterwards. Okay, next. So the project has really the idea to have to bring something new in this inner courtyard, because in Brussels, often it's just like garages or little abandoned places. And we wanted to bring a little bit more life inside of this inner courtyard. So we have created a co-working, like little paramedical offices on the left side. You can see it in the gray zone. We have a shared kitchen, which is directly related to a multifunctional space where we have in the evening yoga classes and Pilates classes. So the users from GROW, which come there every day, can use the garden, can use the shared kitchen and also the terrace. But with this multifunctional space, there are also people coming really from the outside. So people from the city are also coming inside of the site. Next. So as I was saying at the beginning, the site was really full of garages and sheds at the beginning, and the surfaces on the floor was totally closed with paved stones. Our intervention was we were trying to keep the volumes and the existing architecture like it was, but we wanted to work like this, but it's also like a rule in Belgium. You have to maintain the existing structure like they are. You cannot put a lot of another etage on it or something. You have to maintain the existing. And the only places where we wanted to destroy something, it was to open the soil and to create something more permeable and a bigger green space. And so on these photos, you can see that our intention was to work really with the existing places, like the structure, but also the openings. So we tried to reuse the openings for our new windows, for the doors, etc., etc. Okay. The reuse is really a main point of our project. So since the beginning, we tried to organize the materials we could reuse from the beginning of the construction site, but we also worked with other reuse networks from Brussels. So we bought stuff which were on other construction sites before. And we also reused construction material from our own other construction sites. Mm-hmm. And to complete the reuse materials, we tried to really have an ecological approach. So we tried to work with biosourced materials. And I have here 2 examples. In the inside of the building, we have an inner insulation, and this inner insulation is out of cork panels. And this is one of our main idea is to work with one material, but which can help us in different kind of ways. So the inner insulation, the cork panels, helped us also in our daily life to put our plants. I don't know if you see it behind me, but it's really nice to everyday work with it and have like really a relationship with the different materials we are working to. And one other material is like the concrete hemp, which you can see there in the front and on the left side on the facade. So this is the material which has also like two kind of function, because it's like the finishing of the facade, but it's also the isolation. And now I wanted to talk a little bit about the water management and the landscape design. So for the landscape design, we closely worked with Jérémy Herman, who is like the landscape designer who helped us to do the project. And he tried to create different zones and different kind of places in the garden to respond on, like, to help us in our daily life to have a nice environment, but also to like complete the building. So the trees, for example, were put in places where we needed to have shadow in summertime. So it's like a natural store which is outside of the building. And the water management is like there are 4 different places where we manage the water. It's extensive green roofs, which you can see like on the flat roofs there. Then we have like a rainwater harvesting tank, drainage bassin, and the pond. So the water we are taking from the roofs is going directly to the tank, and the water from the tankers we use to in our toilets and also to maintain the garden. And if there's still too much water, it's going to the infiltration basin. So on the left side, you can see like the construction site where we filled up this basin. And it's also in the same idea of the project we have at the beginning. We reused, in fact, like the pavé stone to fill the bassin. So we are still in this idea to reuse really what we find on the construction site. And yeah, and now we have some photos from these different areas in the garden. The idea is really like to have a place where the pond is, so we have like frogs and fishes and some aquatic plants at this place, something a little bit cooler. And then we have lots of flowers, but also lots of plants we can eat like for our lunchtime. So it's really like there's something created between the garden and like the architecture and the use of the garden. There's like always something going together. And yeah, so the last photos are just to give you a little more an idea of how the architecture in this place is looking. Voila. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vera. What a lovely space to work in. And again, really thoughtful approaches that I think, as you pointed out earlier when we were preparing for this call, nothing is particularly high tech. It's just that you followed a very thoughtful approach to create a more adaptive and resilient and sustainable environment that is actually much more pleasant to function in. So congratulations on that work. And I wonder, I don't see any questions coming in for you from the audience, but I can ask you a question. Oh, there is a question. Let's go to that. It is from Eunice Nin. Did you place 2 types of conducts to supply the toilet? One for the rainwater and one for the potable water. I think that might be a question for Geraldine. Maybe Geraldine, you can answer that in the chat. And I'll ask Vera a question in the meantime, which is, was it difficult to convince the building owners or the municipalities to give up a car park for a project like this, or was it, did everyone sort of buy into it and support the idea that your firm had?
It's a good question, because I haven't mentioned that at the beginning. In fact, our architecture, we are like the owners. So this is why we had like the possibility to make so many choices which we wanted to do. but because owner and architects working together, it's like easy to try stuff. No.
Right. Great. Well, that's again representing two of the stakeholder groups, you know, taking the action that you're able to take. And
Yeah.
In some ways, you've unlocked actions for yourselves, which is fantastic, and provided a wonderful use case. I think we have just a few minutes left. Lillian, would you like me to pose a question to the group, or do you want to close this?
Go ahead.
Okay. Great. So I will ask a question to everyone. Across the three projects that you've all introduced to us, is there one solution that you would call the most replicable, regardless of the context? Is there something that, you know, people watching this who are inspired to do something that, you know, is there a solution that you would say, try this, regardless of where they are? And I'll throw it out to anybody who wants to go first. No one? I'm sure someone has a thought. Why don't I ask Geraldine to answer first? I know you talked a little bit about, you know, it's project specific, what solutions can be implemented, but I wonder, is there something that was in your approach that you thought anybody looking to adapt could implement this solution?
But I guess the rainwater reuse is quite easy to implement, actually. And talking about the legislation, because we didn't talk about the legislation so much, it is one type of water that is quite clean and basically quite well accepted by all the country. So I would say this is something easy. What we also wanted to develop, because there will be a question on how to use water and water restriction overall. What we are also willing to develop, but we're still on R&D level, is all the gray water reuse. And on this topic, I know that there are countries like Spain or Germany that are far away from France in the kind of legislation and authorizing this use of the gray water. So when you think that you use each day 60 liters of water from your shower, and this water is going like to the waste water, this is not a real wasted water. With some treatment, it can be reused. So again, we talk a lot about reuse of materials and things like that in the different presentation. I guess reuse of the water is really the things that we need to do for our building now and for the future.
Thank you. And it looks like some of our audience agrees with you. I maybe turn to Andrea and Gerard, because we have a comment from a water resources engineer in the US who thinks that your gravity drainage and permeable surfaces are a very replicable solution. Would you agree with that? Or is there something else that, you know, seems like maybe lower hanging fruit for designers and building owners to implement in their designs?
Yes, we were commenting this because for us it's very important. It's a point very important in architecture, and the reason is simple. If you can observe the cities with calm, you will see that all the pedestrian, not all, but the most the majority of the pedestrian paths or the roads, or all of them are waterproof surfaces. And for us, we think that to give the opportunity to the infiltration, no, the soil, it's important for the soil to achieve this infiltration and to not create only cities, waterproof cities, no? At the end, we will end with a surface that will not have nutrients, that will not be able to create biodiversity, because the most important element, which is water, we keep them above, not always. And
but in the project, we want to look for a compromise, because sometimes the drainage pavements are not available for disabled people. So we in the project of the park, Ossa Park, we thought which was the some path for disabled people, and the other it was drained, but more difficult for disabled people, no?
Yeah.
And about the gravity drainage, I think everyone prefer gravity drainage rather pumps. So this is very easy to use.
Thank you. And that's a very good point about sort of the holistic approach to how you're designing, to think about all users and accessibility. Vera, I have just 30 seconds if you want to add something.
I think it's also like Geraldine said, so it's like the reuse from water, but also I think like to dare to do stuff and to put green in the city. I think it's really important too.
Excellent point to end this on and to bring things full circle. Thank you, Vera. Thank you to all of our presenters. This was really inspirational, and I hope that our audience and those watching the recording will take inspiration from your examples. I think that they are able to reach out to you for more information. Hopefully the contact information will be available. And I think that there's one more, the next webinar, yes. The summer comfort and heat resilience is the focus of the second webinar in the series. It will be held on July 7th, 2026, just 2 weeks from now. And there's a QR code here to register for that. The recording of this webinar will be available on Construction 21 after the session. And if you have questions, you can reach out to Lillian or Julie, and I think they will provide their email along with the slides for the people who registered. And I would like to thank all of you for joining us, and many thanks to our presenters for sharing their time and expertise with us today. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.
thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.